My billionaire CEO ex-husband sat next to me on a 12-hour flight not knowing I was carrying his twins until I collapsed from motion sickness. Your attention, please. We need a doctor. Is there a doctor on board? The flight attendant's panicked voice echoed through the cabin as I collapsed into Blake Carson's arms. My billionaire ex-husband. The man I divorced 8 months ago because I thought he was conspiring with my father's business partner to push my dad out of the family company. The man I hadn't spoken to since I found encrypted files on his laptop filled with my father's confidential business records and private family financial information. And now I was vomiting into an airplane sick bag while he held my hair back at 30,000 feet. Julia, what's wrong? Talk to me. His voice was desperate, scared, nothing like the cold manipulator I thought he was. A man pushed through the crowd. I'm a doctor. Let me through. The doctor knelt beside me, checking my pulse, my eyes. Blake wouldn't let go of my hand. Ma'am, I need to ask you some questions. Any medical conditions I should know about? Are you on any medications? I shook my head weakly. When did the nausea start? I tried to speak, but another wave hit me. The doctor's voice became more urgent. Ma'am, given your symptoms and the severity of this motion sickness, I need to know, is there any chance you're pregnant? The entire first-class cabin went silent. I felt Blake's hand go rigid in mine. I saw the color drain from his face as he stared at me. Because 8 months ago, he'd watched me sign divorce papers with steady hands and cold eyes. 8 months ago, I'd refused to speak to him, refused to listen to any explanation. And now I was 14 weeks pregnant with his twins, and he was about to find out everything. Have you ever had to sit next to the person who destroyed your family for 12 hours? Have you ever had to hide a secret so big it's literally growing inside you while trapped at 30,000 feet with nowhere to run? This is the story of the worst flight of my life. The one where my ex-husband discovered I was pregnant with his twins. The one where everything I thought I knew turned out to be a lie. The one where turbulence was the least of my problems. But what Blake didn't know was that I was carrying his children. And what I didn't know was that the man I thought betrayed my family had actually been trying to save us all along. If you've ever had to face someone you were desperately avoiding, hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me what you'd do in this situation, because what happens when we take off will change everything. Let me take you back to 3 hours earlier, to the moment this nightmare began. Boston Logan International Airport was packed with travelers rushing to make their connections. I stood at gate 27, boarding pass clutched in my sweating hand, trying to blend into the crowd. My rolling suitcase felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Or maybe that was just the exhaustion from 14 weeks of constant nausea. Final boarding call for Flight 447 to Seattle with continuing service to Los Angeles. All remaining passengers please board at this time. I took a deep breath and joined the line. This flight was supposed to be my fresh start. I was heading to Boston to confront my father with evidence I'd found. Evidence that his business partner, Carter Montgomery, was using our family's pharmaceutical company for something illegal. My mother had kept notes. Financial records she'd hidden in her desk. Records that showed irregular payments and suspicious activity. I needed to warn my dad before everything exploded. What I didn't need was to see Blake Carson standing near the gate counter, his phone pressed to his ear, his other hand running through his dark hair in that frustrated gesture I knew so well. My heart stopped. Actually stopped. For a second, I thought I might pass out right there in the terminal. He looked good. Damn him. He looked really good. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing that charcoal gray suit that I used to love because it made his eyes look like storm clouds. His jaw was tight with stress, and he had dark circles under his eyes that suggested he wasn't sleeping well. Good. I hoped he wasn't sleeping. I hoped guilt was eating him alive. I tried to turn around, to disappear back into the terminal, but the gate agent's voice stopped me. Miss Hartley? Julia Hartley? I froze. Blake's head whipped around at the sound of my name. Our eyes met across 20 feet of airport carpet, and I watched shock ripple across his face. Miss Hartley, the gate agent repeated, we've had to make a last-minute seat change due to an aircraft swap. You're being moved from seat 22C to 14A. Here's your new boarding pass. She handed me the paper, smiling like she'd just done me a favor. First class upgrade. Lucky you? Lucky me. I looked down at the boarding pass. Seat 14A. Then I looked back at Blake, who was already walking toward me, his phone forgotten in his hand. Julia. just my name. But the way he said it, with shock and longing and confusion all wrapped together, made my stomach twist. Or maybe that was the morning sickness. Hard to tell anymore. Blake. I kept my voice flat, cold. The way I'd practiced in my head 1,000 times in case I ever ran into him. The way that would let him know I felt nothing. Even though seeing him made my chest ache with everything I'd lost. I didn't know you'd be on this flight. Neither did I. Funny how fate works, isn't it? His eyes searched my face, looking for something. Forgiveness maybe, or an explanation for why I'd cut him out of my life so completely. He wasn't going to find either. Julia, we need to talk. No, we don't. We said everything that needed to be said 8 months ago. Through lawyers. That's not fair. You wouldn't even let me explain. Explain what? I saw the files, Blake. My father's private financial records, his business documents. Emails between you and Carter about restructuring the company. What exactly did you think you needed to explain? His jaw clenched. It wasn't what it looked like. Really? Because it looked like my husband was conspiring with my father's business partner to push him out of the company he built. It looked like you married me to get access to family secrets. It looked like the biggest mistake of my life. Final boarding call. All passengers must board now. The gate agent's voice cut through our confrontation. Other passengers were staring. I grabbed my suitcase and headed for the jetway, desperate to escape this conversation. Blake followed. Of course, he followed. I made my way down the narrow airplane aisle, my stomach already churning from the recycled air and the close quarters and the absolute wrongness of Blake being 3 steps behind me. I found row 14 and stared at my seat assignment. 14. A. Window seat. I looked at the man already settled in 14B. Expensive suit, laptop open, and a boarding pass sticking out of his jacket pocket that I could just barely see. Blake Carson. Seat 14B. You have got to be kidding me. I stood there in the aisle, blocking traffic, seriously considering just getting off the plane, missing the flight, taking the financial hit and the delay and dealing with my father's situation later. But this was urgent. My dad was in trouble. Carter was dangerous. And I was running out of time. Blake appeared behind me, saw the seat numbers, and his expression shifted into something I couldn't read. Looks like we're neighbors. Looks like. I shoved my bag into the overhead compartment with more force than necessary. Blake reached up to help, and our arms brushed. The contact sent electricity through me, and I jerked away like I'd been burned. I can manage. I know you can. You've been managing everything alone for 8 months. The bitterness in his voice surprised me. Like he had any right to be bitter. Like he was the wronged party in this disaster. I slid into the window seat and immediately turned to stare out at the tarmac, my body language screaming, "Leave me alone." Blake settled into the seat beside me, his presence filling the small space in a way that made it hard to breathe. The flight attendant, a woman with kind eyes and a name tag that read Jessica, appeared at our row. "Can I get you anything before we take off? Water? Juice?" "Water, please." My voice came out rough. Blake was watching me. I could feel his eyes on my face. "Make that 2 waters," he said. "And do you have any crackers? Saltines if you have them." Jessica smiled. "Of course. I'll be right back." I didn't acknowledge his thoughtfulness. Didn't thank him for remembering that crackers helped with my motion sickness. That was old information. From when we were married. From when he pretended to care about me. Jessica returned with our drinks and a whole sleeve of crackers, which she handed to Blake with a conspiratorial smile, like they were in on some romantic secret. Like we were a couple instead of 2 people whose marriage had imploded in spectacular fashion. The captain's voice crackled through the speakers. "Flight attendants, prepare for departure." The plane began to push back from the gate. My stomach lurched in protest. I'd barely kept down dry toast this morning. The thought of 12 hours in the air made me want to cry. "You look pale." Blake's voice was quiet, concerned. I hated that he could still read me so easily. "I'm fine." "Julia, you're gripping the armrest so hard your knuckles are white." "I'm fine." I wasn't fine. I was the opposite of fine. But I'd rather die than admit weakness to Blake Carson. I'd rather suffer in silence than let him see me vulnerable. The plane started down the runway, engines roaring. The acceleration pushed me back in my seat. My stomach flipped. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe through my nose like my doctor had suggested. In for 4 counts. Out for 4 counts. Don't think about the motion. Don't think about Blake sitting 6 inches away. Don't think about the fact that you're carrying his babies and he has no idea. Babies. Plural. Twin babies that I discovered last week during an ultrasound I went to alone. 2 tiny heartbeats that made me cry in the parking lot because they were beautiful and terrifying in mine. And his. But he didn't get to know that. He didn't get to know anything about them. The plane lifted off, and my nausea reached critical levels. I kept my eyes squeezed shut, breathing carefully, praying I could make it to cruising altitude before I embarrassed myself. Here. Blake's voice was soft. I felt something being pressed into my hand. I opened my eyes to see him offering me the crackers and a bottle of ginger ale he must have had in his bag. It helps. I remember. Of course he remembered. Blake Carson remembered everything. It was one of the things I loved about him. How he paid attention to details. How he noticed what I needed before I asked. It was also what made his betrayal so much worse. He'd known exactly how to hurt me. Exactly where my family's vulnerabilities were. Exactly how to exploit the trust I'd given him. I took the crackers without comment. Ate one slowly. The ginger ale helped settle my stomach just enough that I thought I might survive the next few minutes. How long is this flight? I asked Jessica as she passed our row. 12 hours total. We have a scheduled stop in Denver due to the route, but you'll stay on the aircraft. Then continuing service to Seattle and Los Angeles. 12 hours. 12 hours sitting next to Blake. 12 hours of fighting nausea and memories and the urge to either scream at him or burst into tears. I wasn't sure which would be worse. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Around us, passengers settled in for the long flight. Laptops opened. Headphones went on. The cabin lights dimmed slightly. Blake turned to face me, his expression serious. Julia, please, can we just talk? Like adults? We are talking. No, we're exchanging hostile pleasantries. I mean really talk. About what happened. About why you left. I know why I left. But you don't know the truth. I know what I saw. What you saw was taken completely out of context. Really? I turned to face him fully, anger overriding my nausea. Then explain the context where it's okay to steal your wife's family secrets. Explain the context where you work behind the scenes with her father's business partner to restructure the family company without telling anyone. Explain the context where any of that is acceptable. Blake's eyes flashed. I was never working with Carter. I was investigating him. Sure you were. Julia, Carter Montgomery is using Hartley Pharmaceuticals for illegal activities. Price fixing, unapproved drug trials, Medicare fraud. I was building a case to expose him without destroying your father in the process. The words hit me like a physical blow. For a second, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at Blake's face, searching for signs that he was lying. But his eyes were steady, honest, the way they used to be before I convinced myself he was a liar. That's not. You can't. I can. And I have been for over a year. Why do you think I had those files? I was documenting Carter's crimes while trying to separate your father's legitimate business from the illegal operations. My head was spinning. This couldn't be true. I'd seen the evidence. I'd made my decision. I'd spent 8 months believing Blake had married me to destroy my family. If that was true, if you were really trying to help, why didn't you tell me? Because I was trying to protect you. The less you knew, the safer you were. If Carter suspected you had information, he could have. Could have what? Blake's expression darkened. Carter Montgomery is a dangerous man, Julia. Men facing federal prison do desperate things. I didn't want you anywhere near this investigation. So you just let me think you were betraying us? You let me divorce you rather than tell me the truth? I tried to tell you. You filed papers and refused to take my calls. You blocked my number. You had your lawyers send me a cease and desist letter threatening a restraining order if I contacted you again. What was I supposed to do? I opened my mouth to respond, but another wave of nausea hit me hard. I fumbled for the sick bag in the seat pocket, my hands shaking. Blake immediately shifted into crisis mode. Jessica, we need some water over here. The flight attendant appeared instantly. Blake was explaining something about motion sickness and dehydration, his hand on my back, rubbing gentle circles like he used to when I was sick. I hated that it helped, hated that his touch still brought comfort. The nausea passed enough for me to sit up, wiping my mouth with a napkin, humiliated and furious and confused. "How long have you been feeling like this?" Blake asked quietly. "A while." "How long is a while?" "Why do you care?" "Because despite what you think of me, I still care about you. I never stopped caring about you." The sincerity in his voice made my eyes burn with tears I refused to shed. "Well, you don't get to care anymore. We're divorced, remember? You don't get to worry about me, or take care of me, or ask questions about my health." "Julia." "No, we're done, Blake. We've been done for 8 months. This flight is just bad luck. When we land, we go our separate ways, and we never have to see each other again." "Is that really what you want?" "Yes." The lie tasted bitter. Because no, it wasn't what I wanted. What I wanted was to go back in time, to trust Blake when he asked me to have a conversation instead of jumping to conclusions, to still be married to the man I loved instead of sitting here, pregnant with his children, lying through my teeth. But I couldn't admit that. Couldn't show weakness. Couldn't risk getting hurt again. "Fine." Blake's voice went cold, distant. He opened his laptop and turned his attention to the screen, effectively dismissing me. I should have felt victorious. I'd successfully pushed him away, maintained my boundaries, protected myself. Instead, I just felt sick. The flight continued. An hour passed in tense silence. I pretended to sleep, my face turned to the window. Blake worked on his laptop, his fingers flying across the keyboard with focused intensity. I snuck a glance at his screen, unable to help myself. Saw financial spreadsheets, legal documents, and there, in the header of one document, my father's name, Richard Hartley. Witness testimony, federal case against Carter Montgomery. My breath caught. Blake noticed me looking and angled the screen so I could see better. "Your father isn't in trouble, Julia. He's helping us build the case against Carter. He's been cooperating with federal prosecutors for 6 months. 6 months. My father had known about this investigation for 6 months and hadn't told me. My mother had been collecting evidence. Blake had been building a case. And I'd been completely in the dark, destroying my marriage over a misunderstanding I'd never given Blake a chance to correct. I think I'm going to be sick again." This time, it wasn't just motion sickness. It was the overwhelming realization that I'd made a catastrophic mistake, that I'd thrown away my marriage for nothing, that Blake had been telling the truth all along. "Hang on." Blake hit the call button for Jessica. "Just breathe. We'll get you some help." The turbulence hit without warning. Moderate chop that made the plane shudder and drop. My stomach lurched. The seatbelt sign dinged on, and the captain's voice came through the speakers. "Flight attendants, please take your seats immediately. We're experiencing unexpected severe turbulence." Jessica was trying to get back to her jump seat. I fumbled with my seatbelt, trying to get to the bathroom before disaster struck. The plane dropped sharply, and I lost my balance, stumbling into the aisle. Blake was out of his seat instantly, catching me before I hit the floor. "I've got you. I've got you." But he didn't have me. The plane was bucking like a wild horse, and my vision was going dark at the edges. The nausea was overwhelming, catastrophic, pulling me under like a wave. I heard Blake shouting for help, felt him lowering me to the floor because there was nowhere else to go. Felt other hands, other voices, chaos all around. And then I was vomiting, violently, while Blake held my hair and whispered reassurances I couldn't quite hear over the roaring in my ears. "We need a doctor." "Is there a doctor on board?" Jessica's panicked voice cut through everything. I was barely conscious, slumped against Blake's chest, vaguely aware of being moved. The first-class galley maybe? Somewhere, with more space. A man appeared. Older, kind face, doctor's calm authority. "I'm Dr. Adrian Pierce. What happened?" She collapsed. "Severe motion sickness, I think. She's been nauseous since takeoff." The doctor was checking my pulse, my eyes, asking Blake questions I couldn't focus on enough to hear the answers. "I need to examine her. Can we get her lying down?" They moved me again. A row of empty first-class seats, the armrests up so I could lie flat. The cabin was still rocking from turbulence, but it was easing. Someone put a cool cloth on my forehead. The doctor's voice was gentle, but firm. "Ma'am, can you hear me? I need to ask you some questions." I managed a weak nod. "Any medical conditions I should know about? Heart problems? Diabetes?" "No." "Are you on any medications?" "Prenatal vitamins." The words came out before I could stop them. before I remembered that Blake was standing right there, listening to every word. Prenatal vitamins. The doctor's tone changed, became more focused. Ma'am, I need to ask you directly. Is there any chance you're pregnant? The question hung in the air. I felt Blake go absolutely still beside me. Felt the weight of his stare. Felt the moment stretching out like taffy, pulling and pulling until it had to snap. I could lie, should lie. But I was too weak and too sick and too overwhelmed to maintain the charade. Yes. I heard Blake's sharp intake of breath. Saw him from the corner of my eye, standing frozen, his face white with shock. How far along? 14 weeks. The math was simple, devastating, obvious. Blake made a sound like he'd been punched in the stomach. The doctor continued his examination, professional and thorough. But I wasn't paying attention anymore. I was watching Blake, watching realization crash over him in waves. 14 weeks. We'd been divorced for 8 months, which meant I'd gotten pregnant right before the divorce. Right before I'd left him. Or maybe during that last night. That awful, beautiful last night when he'd shown up at my apartment begging me to talk to him, and I'd been so angry and hurt and desperate that I'd let him in. We'd fought and cried and ended up in bed together, saying goodbye the only way we knew how. That had been 14 weeks ago. Almost exactly. Now here's where this story gets really interesting. What would you do if you were me? Trapped on a plane with your ex-husband, pregnant with his baby, realizing you might have destroyed your marriage over a terrible misunderstanding? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And make sure you're subscribed, because what happens when Blake finds out the whole truth will leave you speechless. The doctor was talking about dehydration and hyperemesis gravidarum and the need to keep me under observation for the remainder of the flight. He was setting up an IV from the airplane's medical supplies. Being efficient and competent and completely unaware that he just detonated a bomb in my ex-husband's life. Blake still hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, just stood there staring at me like he'd never seen me before. The doctor finished with the IV and stood up. The severe motion sickness you're experiencing is likely pregnancy-related, hyperemesis gravidarum. It's more common with multiples. Multiples? I hadn't mentioned the twins. Hadn't told anyone except my doctor. But Dr. Pierce was looking at my chart, the medical information I'd filled out during check-in, and clearly seeing something that suggested. The elevated HCG levels you mentioned to the flight crew earlier are quite high for 14 weeks. Have you had an ultrasound recently? I closed my eyes. This was not how I wanted Blake to find out. Not like this. Not now. Yes. And? Twins. I said it so quietly I wasn't sure anyone heard. But Blake made another one of those wounded sounds, and I knew he had. Twins? The doctor smiled. Well, that explains the severity of your symptoms. Twin pregnancies often come with more intense morning sickness. I'm going to recommend you stay lying down for the remainder of the flight. Drink plenty of fluids. The IV will help with the dehydration. He gave Blake some instructions about monitoring me, about signs to watch for, about when to call him back if things got worse. Blake nodded mechanically, taking in information while looking like his entire world had just shifted on its axis. Because it had, just like mine had 8 months ago when I found those files. The doctor left, returning to his seat now that the crisis had passed. Jessica brought blankets and more water and promised to check on us every 30 minutes. She tucked the blankets around me with maternal efficiency and gave Blake a sympathetic look. Let me know if you need anything. Anything at all. Thank you. Blake's voice was hoarse, rough. He settled into the seat next to my makeshift bed, and I felt his eyes boring into me. Say something, I finally whispered. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Anything. Tell me what you're thinking. I'm thinking. He stopped. Started again. I'm thinking that for the past 8 months, I've been trying to figure out what I did wrong. Trying to understand why you left. Trying to accept that you hated me enough to walk away without even giving me a chance to explain. Blake. And now I find out you were pregnant. The whole time, for 8 months, you've been pregnant with my children. Twins, and you never told me. The anguish in his voice broke something in me. I didn't know at first. I found out 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized. And then I thought you were the enemy. I thought you'd married me to steal from my family. Why would I tell you about the babies when I believed you were capable of that? Because they're mine, his voice cracked. Because regardless of what you thought I'd done, They're my children too. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you were planning to cut me out completely, to raise my children without ever telling me they existed. I was protecting them. From what? From me? Blake's laugh was bitter. Julia, I've spent the last year trying to protect you, trying to save your father from going to prison for crimes his business partner committed. And you thought I was the threat? I saw the files, Blake. What was I supposed to think? You were supposed to trust me. You were supposed to give me the benefit of the doubt. You were supposed to love me enough to ask questions instead of just leaving. His words hit like bullets, each one finding its mark, each one true. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back 8 months. Sorry doesn't give me back the first trimester of my children's lives. Sorry doesn't fix this. I know. We sat in painful silence. The plane hummed around us. Other passengers were sleeping or watching movies or reading, completely unaware of the drama unfolding in first class. Blake's hand moved to cover mine. The touch was gentle despite his anger. Are they okay? The babies. Are they healthy? Yes, I had an ultrasound last week. Both heartbeats are strong. Both heartbeats. He said it like he was testing the words, trying to make them real. I'm going to be a father. To twins. Yes. And you were never going to tell me. I don't know. I hadn't decided. I was scared. Of me? Of everything. Of you hating me. Of you trying to take them away. Of you using them somehow in whatever scheme I thought you were running. I would never hurt our children. I know that now. Do you? Blake's eyes searched mine. Because I'm not sure you do. I'm not sure you know me at all anymore. He was right. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped knowing Blake and started creating a villain in his place. A man who would betray his wife's family for profit. A man who would marry for access to secrets. But that man didn't exist. Had never existed. I'd built him out of fear and misunderstanding and my own insecurity. The real Blake was sitting beside me, holding my hand, looking at me like I'd ripped his heart out. Tell me about the investigation, I said quietly. Tell me everything. Blake took a deep breath, let it out slowly, and then he started talking. He told me about discovering irregularities in Carter Montgomery's financial reports, about noticing that certain drug trials were being fast-tracked without proper FDA approval, about offshore accounts and price-fixing schemes and Medicare fraud that totaled in the hundreds of millions. He told me about going to federal prosecutors, about building a case that would expose Carter while protecting my father, who'd been kept in the dark about most of the illegal activities. He told me about the encrypted files I'd found. They weren't evidence against my father, they were evidence for him. Documentation that proved Richard Hartley had no knowledge of Carter's crimes. Communications that showed my dad had been actively pushing back against Carter's more aggressive business strategies. He told me about spending a year of his life on this investigation, about the risks he'd taken, about the careful way he'd built the case, so that when it came out, my father would be seen as a victim, not a co-conspirator. And through it all, he'd been trying to protect me, trying to keep me safe from Carter's potential retaliation, trying to preserve my relationship with my father by making sure Richard wouldn't face criminal charges. Why didn't you just tell me? I asked when he finished. Why keep it secret? I tried. Blake's voice was heavy with regret. I started to tell you a dozen times, but the investigation was sensitive. The fewer people who knew, the better. And then you found the files before I was ready to explain, and everything fell apart. I should have asked you about them, should have given you a chance to explain. Yes, you should have. The honesty hurt. But I deserved it. I'm sorry, Blake, I'm so sorry. I destroyed our marriage over something I completely misunderstood. We both made mistakes. I should have been more transparent, should have found a way to tell you what was happening. But Julia, you should have trusted me. After 3 years together, you should have known I would never betray you or your family. He was right, and that truth was almost harder to face than everything else. The IV drip continued its steady rhythm. My nausea had eased to manageable levels. The babies were safe. Blake knew about them now, and I had no idea what came next. What are you doing in Boston? I asked, changing the subject slightly. Meeting with prosecutors. Tomorrow morning, final testimony before the grand jury indicts Carter. And my dad? Has been cooperating as a witness. He's known about the investigation for 6 months, your mother too. My mother knew? Blake nodded. She's the one who came to me originally. She'd found some of the same irregularities you discovered. She was terrified for your father, afraid he'd be implicated in Carter's crimes. She asked me to help protect him. So everyone knew except me. You'd already left by the time your parents got involved. And Julia, they wanted to tell you, but I asked them not to. I was afraid if Carter suspected you knew anything, he might target you. Target me how? Blake's expression darkened. Men facing federal prison do desperate things. Carter has already made threats, against your father, against the prosecutors, against anyone he thinks is working against him. And you thought he might hurt me? I wasn't willing to take that chance. So you let me think you were the villain? You let me hate you. You let me divorce you. All to keep me safe. Yes. The simple answer carried so much weight, so much sacrifice. Blake had let me destroy our marriage because he thought it would protect me. I didn't know whether to kiss him or hit him. The babies kicked, a flutter of movement that still felt strange and miraculous. Both of them, moving together like they were already communicating in some secret twin language. Blake saw my hand move to my stomach. Can I? He was asking permission. This man who had every right to be furious with me was asking permission to touch my belly, to feel his children. Yes. He moved his hand carefully, almost reverently, to rest on the slight swell that was barely visible under the blankets. We waited. The babies, contrary as always, went still. They're stubborn, I said with a small smile. Like their father. Or like their mother. We sat like that for a long time. His hand on my stomach, both of us quiet. Both of us processing the wreckage of our marriage and the miracle of the lives we created. I was flying to Boston to warn my father, I finally said. I found some of my mother's notes, evidence about Carter. I thought Dad was in danger. He was. But the case is almost complete. After I testify tomorrow, Carter will be arrested. Your father will be safe. And then what? Then your father rebuilds his company without Carter. And life goes on. What about us? Blake was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, Julia. 8 months ago, I would have done anything to get you back. I would have begged. I would have fought. I would have moved heaven and earth to make you understand. And now? Now I'm angry. I'm hurt. I'm sitting here finding out I'm going to be a father to twins, and I've already missed so much. I missed the morning sickness and the first ultrasound and the moment you found out there were 2 of them. I missed months of their lives because you didn't trust me. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough. What can I do? Blake, tell me what I can do to fix this. He pulled his hand away from my stomach, ran it through his hair in frustration. I don't know if you can fix it. I don't know if we can fix it. There's too much damage, too many lies, too much time lost. His words felt like a door closing, like the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. But you still love me, I whispered. I know you do. Love isn't enough. We proved that already. Blake. I need to think. I need time to process all of this. The babies, the investigation, everything. Can you give me that? I nodded, even though it hurt. Even though I wanted to grab him and make him listen and force him to forgive me. But I'd done enough forcing, enough assuming, enough making decisions without communication. If Blake needed time, I'd give him time. The flight continued. Hours passed. Blake moved back to his original seat, giving me space to rest. Jessica checked on me regularly, making sure the IV was working, that my color was better, that the babies were okay. I dozed fitfully, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster and the physical toll of pregnancy. When I woke up, I saw Blake working on his laptop again, saw the determined set of his jaw, the focus that had made him a billionaire before 35. And I saw something else, a folder open on the seat beside him. Photos, ultrasound photos. It took me a second to realize they were mine. He must have found them in my bag while I was sleeping. He was studying them with an intensity that made my throat tight, tracing the grainy images with one finger, trying to see the children we'd made together. I closed my eyes before he could catch me watching. Let him have this private moment with his babies. Let him begin to forgive me in his own time. Because Blake was right, love wasn't enough. But maybe, just maybe, time and truth and these 2 little lives we created could be. Can people really come back from this kind of betrayal? Can trust be rebuilt when it's been shattered so completely? I want to hear your stories in the comments. Have you ever had a misunderstanding destroy something important? How did you fix it? And if you're invested in finding out what happens to me and Blake, smash that subscribe button because the next part of this journey will test everything we thought we knew about love and family and second chances. The plane was descending into Denver for our scheduled stop. The captain announced we'd be on the ground for 45 minutes to refuel and switch crews. Passengers could stay seated or deplane briefly. I needed to stretch, needed to move, needed to escape the confined space where every breath felt heavy with unspoken words. Blake helped me up, his hands gentle, despite the emotional distance between us. The IV had been removed, and I was feeling much better physically. Emotionally was another story. We walked down the jetway together, not touching, maintaining careful distance. The Denver airport was bustling with travelers. We found a quiet corner near a window overlooking the runway. I need to call my parents, I said. Let them know I'm okay. Blake pulled out his phone. Use mine. I know you blocked my number, but your dad has mine saved. I took the phone, our fingers brushing in the exchange. The contact sent sparks through me, and I jerked away. He noticed. Of course, he noticed. Blake Carson noticed everything. I dialed my father's number. He answered on the second ring. Blake, is everything all right? Dad, it's me. I'm using Blake's phone. Silence. Then, Julia, where are you? I thought you were flying in today. I am. We're stopped in Denver. Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Another pause. Longer this time. What do you want to know? Are you working with federal prosecutors to build a case against Carter Montgomery? I heard my father sigh. Yes, I am. Julia, I wanted to tell you, but Blake asked you not to, because he was trying to protect me. Yes. So it's true. All of it. Carter has been using Hartley Pharmaceuticals for illegal activities, and Blake has been investigating him. It's all true. Your husband, ex-husband, he's been trying to save the company. Save me. I owe him everything. Why didn't you tell me? Because by the time I found out what Blake was doing, you'd already divorced him. And sweetheart, you were so angry, so hurt. I didn't know how to tell you that the man you thought betrayed us was actually our savior. I'm pregnant, Dad. The words came out before I could stop them, before I could plan or prepare or figure out the right way to share the news. You're, what? Pregnant, 14 weeks, with twins, Blake's twins. My father was speechless. I could hear my mother in the background asking what was wrong, her voice rising with concern. Does Blake know? He does now. He was on the same flight, assigned to the seat next to mine. I collapsed from motion sickness, and the whole truth came out. Oh, Julia. My father's voice was heavy with sympathy and concern and a dozen other emotions I couldn't name. I messed up, Dad. I messed up so badly. We all make mistakes, sweetheart. This wasn't a mistake. This was, I don't even know what this was. Catastrophic failure? Complete destruction of everything good in my life? Can you fix it? I don't know. Blake is so angry. He's hurt. He's missed months of the pregnancy because I was too stubborn and scared to tell him the truth. Then you fight for him. You fight for your family. Blake Carson is a good man, Julia. The best I've ever known. Don't let pride or fear cost you a second chance. What if he won't forgive me? What if he will? My father's simple question hung in the air between us. What if Blake would forgive me? What if we could rebuild? What if our story wasn't over? I have to go, Dad. We're boarding again soon. But I'll see you in Boston. We can talk more then. I love you, sweetheart. Your mother and I both do. And we're here for you, whatever you need. I know. I love you too. I hung up and handed the phone back to Blake. He'd been standing a respectful distance away, giving me privacy for the call, but he'd clearly heard at least part of it. Your father's a good man. I know, and you saved him. You saved our whole family. Blake shrugged. I did what needed to be done. Why? You didn't have to get involved. You could have let the authorities handle it, but you spent a year of your life building this case. Why? Because you loved your father, and I loved you. Protecting him meant protecting you. Even after I left you? Especially after you left me. Blake's eyes were intense. Just because you stopped loving me didn't mean I stopped loving you. I never stopped loving you. The words escaped before I could think better of them, before I could protect myself. But they were true. So devastatingly true. Blake stared at me. What? I never stopped loving you, Blake. Not for a single day. I was hurt and confused and scared, but I never stopped loving you. Then why? Because I thought you'd betrayed me in the worst way possible. I thought you'd used our marriage to destroy my family, and I couldn't live with that. I couldn't stay married to someone I thought was capable of that kind of cruelty. So you left without giving me a chance to explain. Yes, and I was wrong. I was so completely, catastrophically wrong, and I don't know how to fix it. The boarding announcement crackled through the airport speakers. Flight 447 to Seattle, in Los Angeles, is now ready for reboarding. All passengers please return to gate B-17. Blake held out his hand. Come on. We have 7 more hours to figure this out. I took his hand. Let him lead me back through the terminal, back onto the plane, back to our seats where the truth had exploded between us. Back to whatever came next. We settled back into our seats for the second leg of the flight. The cabin felt different now. Lighter somehow, despite the weight of everything we still needed to discuss. Or maybe that was just me, relieved that the secret was finally out. Blake hadn't let go of my hand since we boarded. His thumb traced absent circles on my palm, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache with nostalgia. This was the Blake I'd fallen in love with. Attentive, present, real. How are you feeling? He asked as I buckled my seatbelt. Better. The IV helped, and the break from being in the air. Good, because we need to talk about what happens when we land. I know. Jessica appeared at our row, her smile warm and conspiratorial. How are we doing? Any more nausea? Much better, thank you. Glad to hear it. She glanced between us, clearly picking up on the shift in our dynamic. Can I get you anything? Dinner service is about to start. Just water for now, I said. Make that 2 waters. And Jessica, do you have any more of those crackers? Of course, Mr. Carson. After she left, I turned to Blake. You remembered. That crackers help with your nausea? Julia, I remember everything about you. What you like to eat, how you take your coffee, the way you scrunch your nose when you're concentrating. The fact that you cry during sad commercials, but claim it's just allergies. Despite everything, I laughed. I do not cry during commercials. You absolutely do. There was that one with the dog and the soldier coming home. You sobbed for 20 minutes. That was a really emotional commercial. It was a car commercial. It was effective marketing. Blake's smile reached his eyes for the first time since this disaster of a flight began. And God, I'd missed that smile. Missed the way it transformed his whole face. Missed being the reason for it. I missed you, I said quietly. Every single day for 8 months, I missed you. His smile faded, replaced by something more complex. Pain and longing and uncertainty all mixed together. I missed you too. But Julia, missing each other isn't enough to fix what's broken. I know. So tell me how to fix it. Tell me what you need. Blake was quiet for a long moment, staring at our joined hands. I need honesty. Complete, total honesty. No more secrets. No more assumptions. If something bothers you, you tell me. If you're scared or confused or angry, you tell me. No more running. I can do that. Can you? Because last time, instead of asking me about the files, you just left. You made a decision about our entire marriage without giving me a chance to explain. The criticism stung because it was true. You're right. I didn't handle it well. I was scared and hurt, and I made assumptions instead of asking questions. But Blake, you have to understand. I grew up watching my parents build something together. Hartley Pharmaceuticals was my father's life work. When I thought you were trying to destroy it, trying to destroy him, it felt like the ultimate betrayal. I understand that. But Julia, in 3 years of marriage, did I ever give you reason not to trust me? No. Did I ever lie to you? Not that I knew of. Did I ever do anything that suggested I was capable of the kind of betrayal you accused me of? I looked down at our hands, unable to meet his eyes. No, you didn't, and that's what makes this so much worse. I should have known better, should have trusted you, should have asked instead of assumed. Blake lifted my chin with his free hand, forcing me to look at him. We both made mistakes. I should have told you about the investigation sooner, should have found a way to bring you in instead of keeping you in the dark. I thought I was protecting you, But I was really just shutting you out. So where does that leave us? I don't know yet. But I think we need to figure it out. Because in about 6 months, we're going to be parents to twins. And whatever else happens between us, they deserve better than two people who can't communicate. He was right. The babies deserved better. Deserved parents who could work together even if they couldn't be together. The thought of co-parenting with Blake, of seeing him with someone else eventually, of sharing our children but not our lives, made me want to cry. But I swallowed the tears. I'd cried enough, done enough damage. It was time to be strong. Tell me about the testimony tomorrow. Blake accepted the subject change without comment. I meet with prosecutors at 9. Go over my evidence one final time. Answer any last-minute questions. Then I testify to the grand jury at 2. And Carter will be arrested? The indictment will be unsealed immediately after. Federal agents will arrest him at his office. Your father will be called in as a witness, not a suspect. The media will have a field day, but Richard will come out of this clean. What about the company? That's up to your father. Carter's shares will be seized as part of asset forfeiture. Richard can buy them back, bring in new partners, or restructure completely. But Hartley Pharmaceuticals will survive. You saved my father's legacy. I tried to save our marriage. Saving your father's company was just part of that. The pain in his voice was unmistakable. Blake. Don't. He pulled his hand away, and the loss of contact felt like a physical blow. Don't apologize again. Don't tell me you're sorry. Let's just focus on getting through the next 24 hours. Okay. Jessica returned with dinner trays. Chicken or pasta, she announced cheerfully. I can't eat yet. My stomach is still too unsettled. Blake ordered the chicken for himself and extra crackers for me. We sat in silence as he ate, the air between us heavy with things unsaid. I watched him from the corner of my eye. Noticed the new lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 8 months ago. The tension in his shoulders. The exhaustion in every movement. He looked like a man who'd been carrying the weight of the world alone. Because he had been, while I'd been nursing my hurt and anger, Blake had been building a federal case, protecting my family, and dealing with our divorce. All by himself. Have you been sleeping? I asked suddenly. Blake looked up from his meal, surprised. What? You look exhausted. Have you been sleeping? Some, not much. Why? Because I know you. When you're stressed, you don't sleep. You work through the night instead. Old habits die hard. Blake. What do you want me to say, Julia? That the last 8 months have been hell? That I've been running myself into the ground, trying to build this case while simultaneously trying to figure out how I destroyed my marriage? That there were nights I sat in my apartment, staring at wedding photos wondering what I could have done differently? His voice had risen, drawing glances from nearby passengers. He noticed and lowered it again, but the emotion remained. You want honesty? Here's honesty. I've been a wreck since you left. I threw myself into work because it was the only thing that made sense. The only thing I could control. Carter Montgomery became my obsession because at least with him, I knew who the enemy was. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away. Don't. I can't. If you touch me right now, I'm going to say things I'm not ready to say. Feel things I'm not ready to feel. What things? Blake turned to face me fully, his gray eyes intense. That I still want you. That seeing you pregnant with my children makes me want to drag you back into my life and never let you go. That I'm terrified of being a father, but more terrified of doing it without you. That 8 months apart hasn't dimmed how I feel about you at all. The confession hung between us, raw and honest. Blake, But I also don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if we can come back from this. And I don't know if wanting each other is enough when we've already proven we can destroy each other so completely. So what do? We take it one step at a time. We focus on the babies. We figure out how to be good parents whether or not we can be good partners. And we stop making promises we might not be able to keep. It was the most honest thing anyone had ever said to me. And it hurt more than any accusation could have. Okay. One step at a time. No promises, just trying. Blake nodded slowly. I can work with that. The flight continued. We talked about logistics, where I was staying in Boston, when my next doctor's appointment was, how we'd handle telling people about the babies. All practical, safe topics that didn't require us to address the emotional minefield we were navigating. But underneath it all, I felt the pull. The magnetic attraction that had drawn us together 5 years ago. The chemistry that had made falling in love feel inevitable. It was still there, stronger than ever, if anything. But whether it was enough remained to be seen. "Can I ask you something?" Blake said as the cabin lights dimmed for the overnight portion of the flight. "Of course. When did you find out it was twins?" "Last week. I went for my regular ultrasound, and the technician got very quiet. Then she said, 'I need to check something,' and there they were. 2 heartbeats. 2 little bodies growing inside me." "How did you feel?" "Terrified, overwhelmed, excited, all of it at once." Blake's hand moved unconsciously toward my stomach, then stopped. "Can I mean, is it okay if I?" "Yes." I guided his hand to the small swell where our babies were growing. They were active today, moving and shifting in that strange, fluttery way that still didn't feel quite real. Blake's eyes widened when he felt the movement. "Is that them?" "Both of them, I think. They move together a lot. Like they're already communicating." "That's incredible." We sat like that for a long time. His hand on my stomach, both of us quiet, both of us connected to these tiny lives we'd created. "I'm scared," Blake admitted quietly. "I don't know how to be a father. My own dad was. Well, you know how he was. Not exactly a great role model." I knew. Blake's father had been cold and distant, more interested in building his empire than raising his son. It was one of the things Blake and I had connected over. Both of us coming from families where success was valued over affection. "You're nothing like your father." "How do you know? What if I'm just as cold? Just as incapable of real connection?" "Blake, you spent a year of your life protecting people you barely knew because you loved me. You're capable of more connection than you give yourself credit for." He looked at me, vulnerability written across his face. "What if I fail them? What if I'm a terrible father?" "Then you'll learn and do better. That's what parenting is, showing up and trying and loving them enough to keep improving." "How do you know so much about parenting? You're not even a parent yet." "I've been reading. A lot. Every book I could find about pregnancy and babies and twins. Trying to prepare myself." "By yourself?" The weight of those 2 words settled between us. Yes, I'd been doing this alone. By choice, because I hadn't told Blake, but alone nonetheless. "I'm sorry. For shutting you out. For keeping this from you. You should have been at that ultrasound. Should have seen their heartbeats. Should have been part of every moment." Blake's jaw tightened. "Yes, I should have. But I wasn't. And we can't get that back." "No, we can't. But we have now. And we have the next 6 months. And we have their entire lives after that. So maybe we focus on what we can control instead of what we've lost." "When did you become so wise?" Blake smiled faintly. "Around the same time, my ex-wife got pregnant with my children and didn't tell me." Really puts things in perspective. Despite everything, I laughed. It was a weak, watery laugh, but it was genuine. "Too soon?" "Definitely too soon." We settled into a more comfortable silence. Blake's hand stayed on my stomach, feeling every flutter and kick. Other passengers were sleeping around us, the cabin quiet except for the constant hum of the engines. "What are we having?" Blake asked suddenly. "Do you know?" I shook my head. I didn't want to find out alone. I hoped, maybe when you weren't so angry, you might want to find out with me. At the next ultrasound. Blake's expression softened. "When is it?" "Next week. Wednesday at 2. I'll be there. Assuming you want me there." "I want you there. I want you at all of them. Every appointment, every milestone, everything. I want you to be part of this, Blake. I want our children to know their father. Even if we're not together? Even then, you're their dad. They deserve to know you." Blake was quiet for a moment. "I want more than that." "What do you mean?" "I want to try. To fix us. To rebuild what we broke. I'm angry and hurt and scared, but Julia, I meant what I said. I still want you. I still love you. And I think we owe it to ourselves and these babies to at least try." My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Are you sure?" "Because Blake, I can't do this halfway. I can't try and fail again. It would destroy me." "Then we don't fail. We work. We communicate. We go to therapy. We do whatever it takes." "What about trust?" "Trust has to be rebuilt. I know that. but I'm willing to try if you are. I looked at this man I'd loved and left and never stopped missing, saw the sincerity in his eyes, the hope, the fear that mirrored my own. Okay. Okay. Let's try. Let's see if we can fix this. Blake leaned forward and kissed me, soft and gentle and full of promise. It felt like coming home after a long journey, like finding something I'd thought was lost forever. When we pulled apart, we were both smiling. So what now? I asked. Now we sleep, you especially. You need rest. Blake reclined my seat and covered me with blankets, tucked me in like I was precious, valuable, loved. And despite everything, despite all the pain and mistakes and uncertainty, I felt safe. I woke to sunlight streaming through the airplane window and Blake's hand still resting on my stomach. We'd slept like that, connected, for the remainder of the flight. Jessica's voice came over the intercom. Good morning, everyone. We'll be landing in Boston in approximately 30 minutes. Please return your seats to their upright positions and prepare for arrival. Blake stirred beside me, his eyes opening slowly. Morning. Morning. How did you sleep? Better than I have in months. You? Same. We straightened our seats and prepared for landing. The intimacy of the night before felt fragile in the morning light, like something we needed to protect carefully or it might shatter. What's your plan when we land? Blake asked. I was going to meet my parents for lunch, show them the evidence I found, but I guess that's not necessary anymore since they already know everything. Come to my meeting with the prosecutors. Bring your mother's evidence. It might help strengthen the case against Carter. Are you sure? Blake took my hand. We're doing this together now. Remember? No more secrets. No more separate lives. Together. I liked the sound of that. The plane touched down smoothly. Boston stretched out below us, gray and drizzly. We collected our bags and made our way through the terminal, Blake's hand on the small of my back, protective and possessive. A car was waiting for him. Black SUV with a driver who took our bags without comment. This is Marcus. Blake introduced us. He's head of my security team. Marcus, this is Julia. He hesitated, uncertain what to call me. Ex-wife, I supplied. But maybe, future wife again? Blake's smile was brilliant. I liked the sound of that. Marcus, to his credit, didn't react beyond a slight nod. Ma'am, where to, Mr. Carson? Federal Building downtown. We have a 9 o'clock meeting. And then? Blake looked at me. And then we're having lunch with Julia's parents. I need to talk to Richard about some things. The drive into downtown Boston was quiet. Blake made phone calls, speaking in low tones to his lawyers and the prosecutors. I texted my mother, letting her know I'd landed and would see her soon. Her response was immediate. Thank God you're safe. Your father and I have been worried sick. See you at lunch? We have so much to talk about. That was an understatement. The Federal Building was all concrete and security checkpoints. Marcus escorted us through, his presence making the process smoother. We were ushered into a conference room where 3 people waited. A woman in her 50s stood first. Mr. Carson, thank you for coming. I'm assisting U.S. Attorney Amanda Sterling. We spoke on the phone. Amanda, good to see you. This is Julia Hartley, Richard Hartley's daughter, and my wife. The word hung in the air. Not exactly true, but not exactly false either. Miss Hartley, Amanda shook my hand firmly. We've been hoping to speak with you. Your mother mentioned you might have additional evidence. I pulled the folder from my bag. I found these in my mother's desk. Financial records, notes about conversations with Carter, dates and times that might be useful. Amanda's eyes lit up as she reviewed the documents. This is excellent. This corroborates everything we already have and fills in some gaps. Miss Hartley, would you be willing to testify if needed? I looked at Blake. He nodded encouragingly. Yes, I'll do whatever helps put Carter away. For the next 2 hours, we went over the evidence. Blake's financial forensics, my mother's documentation, testimony from my father, witness statements from Hartley Pharmaceuticals employees who'd noticed irregularities. The case against Carter Montgomery was airtight. By the time Blake testified that afternoon, the grand jury would have everything they needed to indict. This is good work, Mr. Carson. Amanda gathered the papers into organized stacks. The U.S. Attorney will be very pleased. Carter Montgomery has been evading justice for years. Thanks to you, he'll finally face consequences. I didn't do it for justice. Blake's voice was quiet. I did it for family. Amanda's expression softened. The best cases are always personal. Makes you fight harder. After the meeting, Blake and I stood on the steps of the federal building. The rain had stopped, leaving everything wet and shining. You were amazing in there, I said. I had good motivation. My parents? You, always you, Julia. Everything I've done for the past year has been for you. Before I could respond, my phone rang. My mother. Sweetheart, where are you? Your father and I are at the restaurant. We're on our way. Mom, Blake is with me. Is that okay? Silence. Then, more than okay. We've been hoping you two would talk. See you soon. My parents had chosen a small Italian restaurant in the North End. Quiet, intimate, the kind of place where serious conversations could happen without interruption. They were waiting at a corner table when we arrived. My father stood immediately, his face a mixture of relief and concern. My mother's eyes went straight to Blake's hand on my back. Julia. Thank God. My father hugged me tightly. When you said you were pregnant, I didn't. I've been so worried. I'm fine, Dad. We're all fine. Blake. My father extended his hand. Thank you for taking care of her. Always. The sincerity in that single word made my mother's eyes mist. Sit, sit. My mother gestured to the empty chairs. We have so much to discuss. Over lunch, the whole story came out. My parents explained how my mother had first noticed irregularities in Carter's division, how she'd come to Blake in a panic, afraid my father would be implicated, how Blake had spent months building a case that would protect Richard while exposing Carter. I had no idea. My father's voice was heavy with emotion. Carter was my partner for 20 years. I trusted him completely. He counted on that trust. Blake's tone was gentle. Men like Carter are experts at manipulation. You're not responsible for his crimes, Richard. But it was my company. My name on the door. Which is why Blake worked so hard to clear you. I reached across the table to take my father's hand. He protected you, Dad. Protected all of us. My mother was watching Blake with open admiration. You sacrificed your marriage for us. Blake glanced at me. I didn't mean to. I thought I was doing the right thing. Turns out I was just pushing Julia away. You were trying to protect me. I squeezed his hand. I understand that now. My father cleared his throat. So what happens now? With you two? We're figuring it out. Blake's voice was firm. One step at a time. But I'm not walking away from Julia or my children. My mother gasped. Children? Plural? Twins. I smiled despite my nerves. I'm having twins. Oh, sweetheart. My mother was around the table in seconds, pulling me into a tight hug. That's wonderful, terrifying and wonderful. When my father hugged me next, there were tears in his eyes. I'm going to be a grandfather. To twins. You are, and they're going to love you. The conversation shifted to lighter topics. Baby names and nursery colors, and whether we'd find out the genders. My parents' joy was infectious, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely happy. Blake testified at 2 o'clock. I sat in the waiting room with my parents, anxious and proud in equal measure. 3 hours later, he emerged looking exhausted but satisfied. It's done. And? Grand jury voted to indict. Carter will be arrested within the hour. My father sagged with relief. It's really over. Not quite. Blake's expression was serious. There will be a trial. You'll need to testify. The media will be intense, but the criminal case against you specifically is closed. You're a witness, not a defendant. Richard, you did the right thing. My mother took his hand. Cooperating, telling the truth. I'm proud of you. None of this would have been possible without Blake. My father stood and extended his hand to Blake. My son-in-law saved my life. Saved my legacy. I can never repay that. Blake shook his hand firmly. Take care of your daughter. That's payment enough. I intend to. But Blake, I need to know. What are your intentions toward Julia? Dad. I started to protest, but Blake cut me off. I intend to win her back. To rebuild what we broke. To be the husband she deserves and the father our children need. If she'll have me. 3 pairs of eyes turned to me. I'll have you. On one condition. Name it. No more secrets, ever. If something is happening, you tell me. If you're trying to protect me, you ask first. We're partners, Blake. Equal partners. That means we make decisions together. Blake pulled me close. I can work with that. My parents tactfully excused themselves, mumbling something about needing to get home. But they both hugged Blake before they left, and my mother whispered something in his ear that made him smile. After they were gone, Blake and I stood on the sidewalk outside the restaurant, watching the city move around us. I have a confession. Blake's tone made me nervous. What? I booked us a hotel room. Suite, actually. 2 bedrooms. I wasn't sure. I hoped, but I didn't want to assume. I looked up at him. Assume what? That you'd want to stay with me. I do want to stay with you. But Blake, I need time. We both do. We can't just pick up where we left off. I know. That's why there are 2 bedrooms. I want you close, but I want to do this right. Court you properly this time. Court me? Take you to dinner. Bring you flowers. Talk about our future. All the things I should have done before we got married the first time. We did those things. Not enough. I was so busy building my business that I rushed through the romance. This time, I want to savor every moment. The sincerity in his voice made my heart melt. Okay. Court me. But fair warning, I'm pregnant with twins. I cry at commercials, I'm nauseous half the time, and I have to pee constantly. Blake kissed my forehead. I'm aware, and I plan to be there for all of it. The hotel suite was beautiful, overlooking the harbor, with a living room separating the 2 bedrooms. Blake insisted I take the master suite with the bigger bathroom. You need the space, and the bathtub. Baths are good for pregnancy, right? They are. How did you know that? I've been reading. He showed me the stack of pregnancy books on the nightstand, titles like What to Expect When You're Expecting and The Happiest Baby on the Block, all with sticky notes and highlighted passages. You've been reading pregnancy books? Since I found out, which was approximately 8 hours ago, but I'm a fast reader. I picked up one of the books, seeing his notes in the margins. Questions about twins, concerns about hyperemesis gravidarum, circled passages about supporting a pregnant partner. Blake, this is. I want to know what you're going through. Want to understand what the babies need. Want to be useful instead of useless. You're not useless. I've been absent. That needs to change. I set down the book and moved into his arms. Thank you. For trying. For caring. For not giving up on us. Blake held me close, his hand automatically moving to my stomach. I could never give up on you. Or them. You're my family, Julia. The only family that really matters. We stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, feeling our babies move between us. The next several weeks were a blur of activity. Carter Montgomery's arrest made national news. Hartley Pharmaceutical stock took an initial hit, then rebounded when my father's cooperation and Blake's protection of the company became public. Blake and I fell into a rhythm. He flew to Boston every weekend, staying in a hotel near my apartment. We went to dinners and movies, took walks by the harbor, attended my doctor's appointments together. At the 18-week ultrasound, we held hands as the technician revealed the genders. Okay, let's see if these babies want to cooperate. She moved the wand across my stomach. Here's baby A. And, it's a girl. Blake's grip on my hand tightened. A girl. We're having a daughter. And baby B is another girl. Congratulations, you're having twin girls. I watched Blake's face transform with joy and wonder and a hint of terror. 2 daughters. Oh God, I'm going to have 2 teenage daughters someday. One crisis at a time, I laughed. We celebrated with ice cream and started seriously discussing names. Blake wanted something classic. I wanted something meaningful. What about hope? I suggested. For one of them? Hope. Blake tested the word. I like it. Hope for second chances. And grace. For the grace we've both needed to forgive each other. Grace and hope are miracle babies. Blake pulled me close. I love you. I know we're taking things slow, but I need you to know. I love you, Julia. More than anything. I love you too. Always have. Always will. By 20 weeks, we'd established a new normal. Blake had moved some of his business operations to Boston to be closer. We hadn't officially moved back in together, but we spent almost every night at his suite. My apartment had become mostly a storage space for things I didn't want to move yet. "You know, you're basically living with me," Blake pointed out one evening as I sorted through my belongings. "I'm keeping my options open." "Options?" Blake looked mock offended. "What options? What if you turn out to be terrible at the whole domestic partnership thing? Then you can kick me out." "But Julia, I think we both know I'm not going anywhere." He was right. We both knew it, but saying it out loud, making it official, felt like tempting fate. We'd spent months rebuilding trust, going to couples therapy, learning how to communicate without assuming the worst. Slowly, carefully, putting together the pieces of what we'd broken. At 24 weeks, Blake made a suggestion. "Move in with me." Officially. I looked up from the baby registry I was working on. "Blake? I know we said we'd take things slow, but Julia, you're here every night anyway. Your stuff is gradually migrating to my place, and in 4 months, we're going to have 2 newborns. It makes sense." Sense isn't the same as ready. "Are you not ready?" I considered the question honestly. "I'm scared. What if we mess this up again? Then we fix it. Together. But I don't think we will. We're not the same people who got divorced. We've grown, changed, learned." He was right. We weren't the same people. We were better, stronger, more honest. Okay. Okay? Let's do it. Let's move in together. Build a home for our family. Blake kissed me, deep and passionate and full of promise. That night, we made love for the first time since before the divorce. It was different than before. Slower, more intentional. Both of us savoring every touch, every kiss, every whispered "I love you." Afterward, lying in his arms with his hands on my swollen belly, I felt complete. "Marry me." Blake's voice was quiet, but certain. "What?" "Marry me, Julia." Again. For real this time. Not because it makes sense or because we're having babies. But because I love you. Because I want to spend my life with you. Because we've fought too hard to rebuild this, not to make it permanent. Blake, we just moved in together. Don't you think marriage is rushing things? We've been married before. We know what we're getting into. Exactly. We failed at it once. Because we didn't communicate. Because we kept secrets. Because we were young and stupid. Blake shifted to look at me directly. But we're not those people anymore. We've done the work. We've proven we can weather storms together. I want to say yes. Then say yes. But I'm scared. So am I. Blake's honesty was disarming. I'm terrified of screwing this up again, but I'm more terrified of not trying. Julia, you're it for me. You're the love of my life. The mother of my children, my partner in everything. Marry me. Let's do this right. I looked into his eyes and saw my future. Saw early mornings with babies and late nights talking. Saw laughter and arguments and making up. Saw growing old together, watching our daughters grow up, building a life that mattered. Yes. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Again. For real this time. Blake's whoop of joy probably woke half the hotel, but I didn't care. He was kissing me and laughing and pulling me close, and I'd never felt more certain of anything in my life. We got married 3 weeks later. Small ceremony at my parents' house. Just family and close friends. Nothing like our first wedding with hundreds of guests and formal elegance. This wedding was real, intimate, meaningful. I wore a simple dress that accommodated my pregnant belly. Blake wore jeans and a button-down shirt. We wrote our own vows, standing under an arbor my father had built. Julia. Blake's voice was thick with emotion. The first time I married you, I promised to love you forever. I broke that promise. Not because I stopped loving you, but because I stopped showing you that love. I kept secrets. I shut you out. I forgot that marriage is a partnership. He took my hands. This time, I promised to communicate, to trust you with my fears and failures, to include you in every decision, to be worthy of the second chance you've given me. I promised to be the husband you deserve and the father our daughters need. I promised to love you not just in the easy moments, but in the hard ones too. I was crying before he finished. Happy tears that I didn't bother wiping away. Blake. I took a shaky breath. The first time I married you, I thought love was enough. I thought if we loved each other, everything else would work out. I was wrong. Love without trust is nothing. Love without communication is meaningless. I squeezed his hands. This time, I promised to ask instead of assume, to talk instead of run, to fight for us instead of against you. I promise to be vulnerable even when it's scary, to trust you even when it's hard, to build a life with you based on honesty and partnership and real, messy, beautiful love. The officiant, a family friend, smiled through her own tears. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again, Blake, you may kiss your bride. Blake pulled me close and kissed me like I was his whole world, because I was, and he was mine. Our daughters were born at 37 weeks. Healthy, beautiful, perfect. Grace came first, 6 pounds even, with a shock of dark hair. Hope followed 3 minutes later, 5 pounds 12 ounces, with Blake's gray eyes. I'm a dad. Blake held both girls, one in each arm, his face a picture of awe and terror. I'm actually a dad. You're a great dad. I watched him with our daughters, seeing the love transform him completely. They're lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one. Over the next year, we settled into family life, sleepless nights and endless diapers, and the particular chaos of twin infants. Blake scaled back his business responsibilities to be present. I worked from home, designing buildings while babies napped. It wasn't always easy. There were arguments about feeding schedules and sleep training methods. Moments of exhaustion where we snapped at each other. Times when I wondered if we'd made a mistake. But we'd learned how to fight fair, how to apologize quickly, how to choose each other even when it was hard. On our first anniversary of remarriage, Blake surprised me with a trip. My parents took the girls for a long weekend, and we flew to a beach resort in the Caribbean. No babies, no work, no stress, just us. On our last night, we sat on the beach watching the sunset. Blake pulled me close, and I rested my head on his shoulder. Do you ever regret it? He asked quietly, taking me back. Never. This year has been the hardest and best year of my life. Even the sleep deprivation? Especially the sleep deprivation. It means we're doing this together. Blake kissed the top of my head. I was thinking about that flight. The worst flight of our lives? The best worst flight. If we hadn't been seated together, if you hadn't collapsed, if the truth hadn't come out, we might have lost each other forever. Fate works in mysterious ways. Or maybe it was just really aggressive matchmaking by the universe. I laughed. Either way, I'm grateful. For that flight, for the truth, for the second chance. Me too. Blake pulled me closer. I love you, Julia Carson. I love you too. Always. 2 years later, we threw a party for Grace and Hope's second birthday. My parents were there, doting grandparents who spoiled the girls shamelessly. Blake's mother had come around, acknowledging her mistakes and building a relationship with her granddaughters. Even Carter Montgomery's case had concluded. He was in federal prison, sentenced to 20 years. Hartley Pharmaceuticals had thrived under my father's renewed leadership and Blake's strategic guidance. Everything had worked out, not perfectly, but beautifully in its imperfection. As I watched Blake play with our daughters, chasing them around the yard while they shrieked with laughter, I marveled at how far we'd come. From strangers on a plane to divorced couple, to tentative partners to a family. All because of one terrible, wonderful, life-changing flight. You look contemplative. My mother appeared beside me with a glass of lemonade. Just thinking about everything that's happened, how different life could have been. But it's not. This is your life. These are your blessings. I know, and I'm grateful for every single one. Even the hard parts? Especially the hard parts. They taught us what we needed to know. My mother hugged me. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. You and Blake. You fought for your marriage, for your family. That takes real strength. We had good examples. I smiled at her. You and Dad, the way you've built a life together. We've had our struggles too. Every marriage does. The secret is choosing each other every day. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Blake jogged over, carrying a laughing Hope while Grace clung to his leg. Mama, look, I'm flying. I see, baby. You're very high up. Blake set Hope down and pulled me into his arms. Best birthday party ever. They're happy with balloons and cake. Still counts. He kissed me, quick and sweet, while our daughters made exaggerated gagging sounds. As the sun set on our backyard full of family and friends and laughter, I felt overwhelmingly blessed. This was what mattered. Not success or money or status, but love, family, second chances, and the courage to fight for what you believed in. If this story of unexpected reunions, terrible flights, and second chances moved you, I need you to subscribe to Luck's Love Chronicles with Mr. Wentworth. Every week, I bring you stories that will make you believe in love, redemption, and the power of truth. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have forgiven Blake? Would you have kept the pregnancy secret? I read every comment, and your stories inspire the narratives I share. Remember, sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. Sometimes a terrible flight lands you exactly where you need to be. Sometimes the person who hurt you is also the person who saves you. Blake and I learned that love isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. It's about communicating when you're scared instead of running. It's about trusting your partner to handle the truth, even when the truth is messy. We learned that family is worth fighting for. That second chances are possible when both people are willing to do the work. That forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing to move forward together. Our daughters will grow up knowing their parents' story, the mistakes we made, and the grace we showed each other, the way we fell apart and fought to come back together. They'll know that love is resilient, that trust can be rebuilt, that even when things seem impossible, hope remains. Because that's what we named them for. Grace for the forgiveness we gave each other, hope for the future we built together. Until next time, this is Mr. Wentworth reminding you that your story isn't over. Even when it feels like everything is falling apart, you might just be one flight, one conversation, one moment of honesty away from everything falling into place. Sometimes fate puts you in seat 14, next to the one person you were trying to avoid. Sometimes motion sickness reveals secrets you weren't ready to share. Sometimes 12 hours trapped at 30,000 feet is exactly what you need to find your way home. Blake and I took the long way around. We hurt each other, lost each other, and found each other again. But every moment, even the painful ones, led us here. To this life, this family, this love that's stronger for having been tested. So if you're facing someone from your past, if you're carrying secrets that feel too heavy, if you're wondering whether broken things can be fixed, remember our story. Remember that communication matters more than assumptions. That trust takes time to rebuild, but it's worth the effort. That love, real love, is worth fighting for. And remember that sometimes, the worst flight of your life becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. Now go out there and build your own extraordinary life. Fight for your own second chances. Love with your whole heart even when it's scary. You are worthy of that love. You are capable of that growth. You are stronger than you know. See you in the next chapter. And,